Hey, everybody, it's Dr. Sally here, and this is the Hope Illuminated podcast, where we share powerful stories, science, and well-being strategy. Here, isolation and despair can be defeated and a passion for living rekindled. No flashlight required for our journey, just fired up listeners ready to gain guidance from myself and our international experts. And today, we got a gem for you with a very special person, Brandon Wilcox from Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners here. And he's going to talk about one of my favorite things in suicide prevention, which is carrying contacts. Carrying contacts. What if suicide prevention wasn't super complicated? What if small messages made a big impact? That's where we're headed. And, you know, I think we've all had that moment where we're just kind of down, things are not going our way. And then somebody just gets the intuition just to send us a text or a message that says, thinking about you today, or you're on my mind. Consider this a big virtual hug or whatever. And it just feels good, right? It feels good. Well, it's more than just a cute thing to do with friends. This 20-second thing that we could do actually can save lives. And that's where we're going today. We're going to talk about carrying contacts, why they work, how to do them, what's the best practices and do them. And you know what? Anybody can do them. So that's the cool thing. So welcome to the show, Brandon. I'm super grateful you're here. This has been my week for Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners. I think this is my third call in 2 days, and I couldn't be happier connecting with you. So glad to see you, my friend.
Thank you, Dr. Sally. I'm super grateful to be here and to talk about something that's like really near and dear from my heart, from both a provider's experience, but also from someone who has received this level of support and care from loved ones in my family. So super excited to be here and to chat with you about this.
Yeah, me as well. Well, let's dive in. Let's tell folks a little bit about Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners and your work in mutual peer support and like all the things you're doing over there. The super innovative work that's happening out of my special state.
Yeah, so Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners is a grassroots organization here in Colorado. We have been known to serve Colorado for the last 15 years through our statewide crisis line. And then with the integration of 988, Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners was the provider of 988 services in Colorado for several years. We no longer provide those services as those have shifted to a new provider, but Rocky Mountain is still very much in touch with Colorado and serving Colorado. And what we like to say is moving from crisis to connection. So finding those places where we can serve individuals and bring connection in those moments of crisis, those moments of despair, and in those moments of suffering. And so I come to this work with what I call a peer support, lived experience, living experience, mutual aid lens. So I'm an individual who has survived a suicide attempt. I live with varying degrees of suicidal intensity, and I'm a sibling loss survivor as well. And so I come to this work understanding the power of lived and living experience and how much we can truly support each other through that lens and through the mutual aid lens. And when I say mutual aid, it's this understanding of we are coming at this together with no power differential, with no set plan or set answers to our human experience, but we're here to share that experience together with empathy, with compassion, with a deep sense of curiosity, and to walk alongside each other, not to fix each other's problems, but to really kind of think about meaning making and what this lived experience means for us and how we can make the most of it. And so that's how I approach this work. I'm really lucky to approach this work with Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners with a mutual aid and lived experience lens. And that's what my profession has been for the last 16 years, is helping building and evolving and developing peer support programs and mutual aid programs in the state of Colorado.
Woohoo! Yes, so much I want to talk about there. Well, first of all, if you haven't heard, my listeners, about Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners, they really are pushing the envelope of innovation in the space of crisis response. And this idea of carrying contacts and peer support is one of the first ways they did, like a decade ago. They're way ahead of the curve. And I love the frame of mutual aid and the decreasing of the power differential, because that is in many ways problematic in our whole crisis response. Be the authority who I just met you 2 seconds ago is going to tell you exactly what you're going to need to do to get yourself out of this crisis. It's just hubris. There's a quote that I always do when I do the training in peer support, and it says something like, "I could walk a mile in your shoes, but I already know they're just as uncomfortable as mine. So you know what? Let's just walk next to each other instead." I
I
love
love
that.
that.
Isn't that
I
fun?
love that. Yeah, I love that.
Yes. So if you haven't heard of mutual aid before, go dive in. There's a whole body of stuff there that is going to be really rich, I think, as people start to unpack this work. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about you. You have a really big why, and you alluded to it in your introduction about being
Yeah,
a sibling loss survivor, but also someone who has experienced thoughts and feelings of suicide, a suicide attempt survivor. And let's start with that part of your story first, and then we'll also go into what has happened with when you received this kind of caring connection from people in your life.
absolutely. Uh, so as you can imagine, this is a vulnerable subject to talk about, even though I'm someone with lived experience and I bring this story with me everywhere I go. I still feel vulnerability when it comes
Yes.
up. So if you see me struggle with words or take a moment to pause, you'll probably see me just comfort myself as I talk about these experiences, because even though they may feel far removed at times, they're still part of my experience. And I wouldn't call them a wound, but like a scar that I remember is still there, right? And so this is actually language that I feel like you have given me, Sally, as someone who lives with suicidal intensity, which is not just, it's this understanding that my thoughts sometimes could be um, very, very intense at times, and then can wean and not be intense at times. And so for me, it's kind of like clouds in the sky. They can come and go. Sometimes those clouds look like they have a lot of weight and they might drop rain, or they might bring the storm. And sometimes those clouds are just clouds in the sky and they're going to move on past. I'm not going to give them any weight or any thought. And for me,
Whoa, stop there for a second. That's amazing. I've never heard anyone describe it that way. Super
yeah,
effective. And for those of you who haven't heard of the term suicide intensity before, I'm going to give credit where credit is due. It was coined by Eduardo Vega, who's been a business partner of mine for forever. And I was like, dude, that is really a helpful way to look at it, because intensity is a dynamic word, just like the clouds. It's moving,
yes,
it's coming and going, it's stronger, it's weaker. And the words we usually use don't do justice in the human
yes,
experience of that.
yeah,
So thank you for adding another layer of bringing that to life in terms of like your own experience and how you've interpreted it. I love it. Thank you, Brandon.
yeah.
Sorry to
Well,
interrupt. I just got
no,
really
no, no, no,
excited
no.
there.
Thank you. And thank you, Eduardo, for giving me language that I struggled with for a long period of time, because the term ideation didn't
Mm.
always sit with me. Like it wasn't always an ideation. Sometimes it was just a thought, and it's a human experience. And we have these thoughts at times. And so I call it suicidal intensity. And I live with suicidal intensity. Sometimes the thoughts are intense. Sometimes the cloud is just in the sky. It's going to blow by. I don't need to put any weight to it. But there has been moments of my life where that intensity was so strong, where I did not believe that I could get out of that form of intensity, where it did lead to a suicidal action and or behavior of trying to take my own life. And so that's why I obviously call myself a suicide attempt survivor, is I have followed through with a plan with the intention to die. I am incredibly grateful this day and almost every day that has come since then, that I have not passed, that I am not dead, and I am still in this work. And I get to shine a light to this. And I truly do believe my story can be medicine. So I don't have regret for my suicide attempt. I have really worked to move past that, what sometimes feels like this internal shame or this internal guilt, because I know that our stories can become medicine. They can become light. They can become hope. So I really use my story for that, which is also a healing practice. It removes that guilt. It removes that shame. But I think where I connect my suicidal experience to carrying contacts and to carrying messages of hope is I really do believe that this was my lifeline and my bridge to my future. Sally, as you can imagine, shortly after a suicide attempt, there's a lot that comes up for someone, especially in the sense of sharing with others. Who can I tell? Who should I tell?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like, am I strong enough to tell them? Again, like a lot of us live with some form of shame or guilt around this action or around this thought. And I don't think that's our fault. We could probably dive into some societal narratives that tell us
Sure.
that shame and that guilt. But um, I know for me, once I was able to like lean into that courage, to lean into that vulnerability and share with certain friends and certain loved ones, hey, I had this experience. Um, I was met with an overwhelming amount of love and compassion and empathy, something that I I didn't necessarily expect, but I'm super grateful for. And
Mm.
and I think that we tend to think of carrying contacts and a message from a friend maybe as two separate things, but I want to kind of overlap them as like
Mm.
that is the caring contact, is a message from a friend saying, I love you. I'm
That's
glad you're
right.
still here. I'm really grateful for our friendship. Those type of messages for me really affirmed that I was loved, that I was part of a community, and that my situations or problems or challenges weren't a burden to others. They were probably the exact opposite. They were a connecting point to my friends. They wanted to be there with me, they wanted to help me. And so just hearing those messages from people shortly after an attempt let me know that I wasn't a burden, that I'm connected to people that love me, and that when I'm not alone, I can likely um, take on the challenges that lay ahead of me and that are a part of my human experience right now. And so I just know for me and for so many others that I've probably walked alongside, that check-in, that I care about you, I love you, I'm grateful for you, that does wonders to our spirit and our soul when we're questioning, are we loved? Are we
Hmm.
alone? Do
Hmm.
people care about me? Am I a burden? When we receive messages that tell us the exact opposite, I could put that narrative aside and move forward. And that's what was really big in my post attempt recovery. And is just that feeling of like, wow, people really do care. And they want to be with me in this.
Mm. Oh, just so beautiful how you put that. And also like your experience, and thank you so much for all of that sharing. And it does take a lot of courage to do this publicly, even when you've done it many, many times. So thank you for stepping in here with us and sharing a little bit about
Absolutely.
what it feels like, right? Because I think there's so much um, anxiety on both sides, on the side of the person disclosing, how is this going to land with people? Are they going to judge me? Are they going to reject me? And there is some reality in that. People can be mean
Yeah.
and afraid and just really act out of their fear. Um, but the experience of many in the close confidants can be this overwhelming sense of support and gratitude and love. And on the other side, the fear of people. And we're going to unpack this a little bit. You kind of, not knowing what to say,
Yeah.
let's just let the professionals handle this because this is out of our
It's not
realm. So
mine.
super scary. But then what happens is the loved ones pull back, pull back, pull back, and that sense of isolation and shame just really takes root. So did you have any of those experiences with people that surrounded you? If they're like, oh, I just don't know what the right thing to say is, or what if I make it worse, or you know,
Yeah.
people who struggled a little bit with that because of their fear or just their uncertainty?
I think for the most part, I didn't. I'm really lucky enough to have a partner in my life who loves me dearly. And she reached out to a lot of my friends and
Mm.
also said, there is rarely the wrong thing to say. Like silence is probably the worst thing that we could do right now. Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I was protected by a partner who also kind of initiated, like, you're okay just to reach out. There's no wrong words, things of that sort. But Sally, I did have a couple conversations with some dear friends of mine, probably shortly after I told them about my suicide attempt. I'm thinking about one friend in particular who it was silent. I told them, I heard no response. And about a month later, I reached out to that person and I just kind of opened up the talk of like, hey, I haven't heard from you. And they were just really raw and honest of like, I didn't know what to say. I've never interacted within this. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to dismiss you or devalue your experience. And I think what unfortunately happened is that fear created a wedge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think that we experience this from time to time. I know I've been a professional in this field for 16 years, and there are still moments where I'm like, I don't know what to say right now, which is a human experience. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
it's okay for us to feel that way. And one of the things that I want to remind people is that there's rarely the wrong words. And I know we're going to go over some of the wrong words and some of the things that might not have an impact today. But one of the things I talk about a lot in this space is that where presence is better than perfection. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard to show someone you're caring when we're silent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we could put those two kind of things on out of our mind, is that like I don't need to be perfect right now. I just need to show them that I'm connected. And I need to reduce the silence. I need to be present. I need to say something. Those two things can be monumental in someone's life. And then we could get out of our own head. And sometimes all it takes is sending the first message. It's like starting the sentence, starting the icebreaker, right? And I think a lot of times we build a story in our head that it's going to be scarier than it is. And then you send that first message and you get it received back, and then the conversation flows. And it's like, okay, we're going to navigate this together. Something I remind a lot of people in this work, or even in my friends, is I say, embrace the awkward.
Yes.
Just embrace it, right? Because like conversations about the human experience, whether we're talking about something like suicide or someone's first date, it could be awkward. Like the human experience is this like messy choreography of a dance sometimes. And I think it's okay that we just like embrace that awkward and lean into it. And I remind people all the time, I would rather you be awkward than be silent. So just like embrace the awkward, lean into the awkward part of the human experience, and like, let's open up the conversation, because that's probably the best thing we can do for the people that we love.
And just say it up front. Say,
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
I feel awkward.
I say it's awkward, but I care about you. Oh, great. How honest. How lovely. How lovely to have honesty.
Yeah. I actually think it's like a breath of fresh air. And I don't want to get too soapboxy right now, but I do think sometimes we live in a society where people feel like we need to be perfect or we need to be performative. But when we can be a little bit messy and we can embrace that awkward, it's like this breath of fresh air. We're receiving authenticity in a way that we don't get it on the day to day. And I think our like spirit and soul kind of craves that a little bit. And there's just something magical that happens when we're authentically messy with each other.
Yeah. It's just like we took down those masks and we're just together. Yeah.
We're just humans together.
Well, I know many people in the suicide prevention space are aware of the caring contact research. It's been out there for decades. It's actually really, really convincing. Like it's not debated. And it's been replicated with all kinds of different messaging types and populations and different types of mental health emergencies. And it's a thing. We don't have to debate that it works. So there's not many things that have this size effect that the caring contact stuff does, but it's not necessarily top of mind when people are thinking like, oh my gosh, someone's suicidal. What do we do? We got to send them to the hospital. Well, we actually also have data, several decades, that show forced hospitalization can often increase suicide rates. So, right, the general population's idea of what's helpful actually can cause harm. And this thing that is simple, that takes 20 seconds, that children can learn, can actually save lives. So are there parts of the research that when you were learning about it that stuck out to you, or you're like, yeah, that makes total sense?
Yeah, there's several parts that kind of just like stuck or continue to stick with me. The first part is the evidence that shows that it is impactful, right? Like Sally, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but we know that we're not the greatest at suicide reduction. And that we oftentimes spend a lot of energy in evaluation and assessment that doesn't necessarily move the needle on suicide reduction in our society or in our communities. And I think when we do read research or we see data that shows that something is successful, we need to be paying attention to that. And so seeing something like this be successful is like my first green light. The other thing that stands out to me is simplicity. I think sometimes we overcomplicate things when it comes down to the human experience. I love one of your previous podcasts that just talked about extending time, like delaying time, right?
I love that. One of my ones too.
And how like just extending 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 15 minutes can have a huge impact on someone, and it could be incredibly life-saving. And it's these simple things that kind of stand out to me. And not that I'm trying to, I guess, simplify the human experience, but I am trying to say, like, it doesn't need to be complicated in showing love, care, and compassion to others. And that suicide prevention or reduction or intervention, or however we want to use those terms, can be as simple as just checking in on someone and showing them that you care. And so when I read the research, like that really sticks out to me as like, it's not this like long, complicated 8-week intervention that someone needs to go to every day to feel better. It is something that's simple. It's like two hearts are connecting, two humans are connecting, and that can be life-saving. I think the other thing that's really stuck out to me is one, it is been replicated and researched over and over again since the 1970s and continues to show that it's impactful. That it also, like, as we have evolved as humans, we now have texting, we have email, we have all of these other ways to communicate to each other that are not just person to person or voice to voice over the phone. And carrying contacts is shown equally as successful in any of those modalities. It could be a postcard, which that's where it started, right? It started as a postcard that someone got in the mail. It can be effective as a text message. It can be effective as a voicemail on your phone that you only heard and you never responded back to. And so I think what's amazing is that as communication modalities have evolved, that we have studied, does a caring contact model work within these? And the answer truthfully is yes, which is also really important when we start to think about kind of generational differences in communication. We know younger people text more often than they'll pick up the phone and call. They'll use Snapchat and Instagram more often than they'll pick up the phone call. So if we can find other ways to connect messages, that's going to also be life-saving. And so like those parts of the research like really stick out to me, is that we can find almost any way to communicate that message and it's going to be received by that person.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the whole thing. And I'm going to get it possibly wrong because I'm not a researcher with a capital R, but there's something in the science that says Occam's razor, right? So given all types of explanations, the simplest one is probably the truth. Like, don't overcomplicate it. Like, it's probably the simplest explanation. And then when you think about how this research has evolved, I think the first iteration in the 70s was actually like letters from physicians,
like handwritten letters, right?
Yeah. From the attending physician to the person who was discharged, and basically just saying, you know, like, we were so glad we were here for you. If you needed anything, come back to us. You know, love Dr. Jojo or whatever. Like, it was like this little letter that went out there, and then they replicated it again in Australia, and it was automated postcards. And when I heard that part of the research, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, you know, we all get these things in our mailbox and we're like, check it. You know, it's like, here's a real estate thing and like a coupon to fix your tires, like check it. We don't even look at it. I was like, how do you tell me an automated postcard feels like a caring contact? And so I asked my friends with lived experience, I said, explain this to me. And they said, you know, Sally, sometimes we get up every day and we're like, yeah, I'm not sure if I want to be here or not. So show me a sign. Like, is there a sign today? And if I go to my mailbox and there's something that says, I care about you, well, that might do it. I might just stay. Yeah. And I was like, whoa. And if an automated postcard can have that kind of effect, imagine a really genuine connection through a phone call or a show up on my doorstep or a sticky note or a text. Yeah, it makes sense. And I also think, I haven't seen the science on this, but it makes sense to me when I think about it, that when people are going through depression and trauma, we do know that there's things that happen to the brain where it just gets really dark and honed in on negative things. And like, we can look at it on the brain synapse firing. It's just not, you look at the brain scans, they are dark, just like people's experience. And what this kind of thing can do is it can cut through that just for a second and say, look up right here. I'm here. And that can kind of break a little bit of that tunnel vision, just even on the brain level. So I think it's pretty miraculous. All right.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Let's get really gritty, nitty gritty, because there are some do's and don'ts. Let's do it. Because I want people to walk away like, I got it. Like, I could do this. Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. So let's start with the don't list so we can end on the positive, because there are some things, you know, when people are like, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to make it worse. Well, let's help you out here. And I think one of the things that people get curious about that's not helpful is the voyeuristic kinds of engagement. Like, well, how did you do it? Or so can you talk a little bit about that as a don't? Like, even if you're really super curious about that, like, don't go there. What about the voyeuristic kinds of connections that people, or questions that people might ask?
Yeah, you said it best. Don't go there. I think if that person wants to invite you into that space and wants to share parts of that story or what it was like in that moment for them, they will bring that to you. I don't necessarily think that's any of ours to kind of ask to be brought into, right? And so I'd say, like, stay away from those. I would also say that there's probably no part of that answer that should change the way that you care for that person or the compassion that you're going to give for that person. It will likely actually breed more of a fear or an anxiety response within you that you might start becoming reactive around, right? And so I would actually challenge people to say maybe the less you know about the how will allow you to show up more as a caring individual, a less reactive individual. And what, so I guess what I mean by that, let me give an example. I know, like if someone is maybe has shared that their how was going to be using a firearm, but then maybe that person knows that about that person, and then they become incredibly reactive anytime that person's talking about maybe a hunting trip that's coming up, or things of that sort. It's still a part of their identity. A lot of gun owners, there's a part of their identity. I'm a hunter, I'm a target shooter, I do these things in a club and things of that sort. And I don't want them to always have to face a reaction from someone else when they're actually engaging in some part of their identity, right? Don't get me wrong. Like there are times that we probably should counsel to the access of lethal means and talk about those things. But when we are just giving a caring message, that's not necessarily for us. And so I think like we want to remove some of that voyeuristic aspect, because I think it changes the way that we can show up for someone. And the last thing that we want to be is reacting in fear or anxiety when we're trying to share a space of compassion and empathy. And so I'd say like, let's remove our sometimes human curiosity of like, because I mean, we're curious creatures, right? And I also think sometimes this is romanticized in our society sometimes, whether through books or television or whatever. And let's remove that. If we create a safe enough space, maybe that person's going to bring us into that part of their story in due time, but we don't necessarily need to be asking those questions. I actually think, Sally, in the early parts of connecting with an individual, sharing a caring contact or a message of care and hope, questions probably don't need to live in that space that much.
That's right.
Yeah, because I think questions sometimes, and I know we'll get into this, they breed a sense of pressure. Now I have to respond to that question. I've got to think of the right answer to that question. I have to be maybe somewhat concerned about how you're going to respond or you're going to react to the answer to that question. And I know for me, at certain times of struggle or despair, even having to answer a question might feel like too much for me. And then I could go down this whole spiral of like, now I'm failing you because I'm not responding back and you're going to think I'm a bad friend. And so I think like those earlier points of connection that we're having with people, if we're really stepping into the space of wanting to send a caring contact, I think we should probably reduce questions, or at least the amount of questions, and maybe show more of like a care towards them than needing a response back or having them feel pressure that there's an expectation for a response, which that's what a question is, right? There's an expectation for a response. And so when we're asking a lot of those questions, that can feel like a lot of pressure really early on in that connection.
Oh, okay. Pause. I'm going to go back for a second on the voyeuristic question, because I think there's a couple more things that I just want to highlight. First of all, it's understandable that you're curious about the how. It's a part of the story that's missing. And in your head, you just want to sequence all the things. It's understandable, but we're saying like resist, because that type of inquiry is more about you putting your story together for your head. It's not about showing care for the other person. So resist that for your own need and be present for the other person. I mean, we're talking about people who are coming through a suicide intensity period or post-suicide attempt, but this also works post-suicide loss, where people can do caring contacts. And, it doesn't happen very much anymore, but it used to happen often when I would do Q&A with audiences and people say, well, how did he do it? And I said, well, I purposely left that out because you don't need to know that I love him. And to know that his death had a profound impact on me. And usually that does the trick. Like, you don't need to know that. Like, this is the part of the message that I really want you to hear. And I'm not doing it to be in your face. I'm just saying it's not going to help. It's not going to help you to have those images. Yeah. It's certainly not going to help the rest of the audience to have those images. So we're not going to go there. Yeah. So ask yourself, is this really for me and my voyeuristic curiosity, or my storytelling, filling the blanks curiosity, or am I really showing up for someone else? And I really appreciate your comment about the questions breed pressure, because what is it that is treatment as usual? We send you to the ER and it's 4 hours of relentless interrogation of never ending questions in the 40-page risk assessment. Yeah. But yet that, that's never acknowledged as a pressure. That's acknowledged as help. So it's just so interesting. All right. What's more on the no side of things? We've got probably not silence. That's not caring contact. Maybe not some voyeuristic inquiry. Maybe not a lot of questions in general. What are some other like shy away from?
Well, and just to maybe piggyback one more thing on those questions is if someone's had a certain experience with suicidal intensity that maybe has led to hospitalization or forced treatment, or even maybe even voluntary treatment, we do know through a trauma-informed lens that sometimes by answering certain questions, our rights have been taken away from us, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that could also just bring up the sense of like safety. Like, why are you asking me this many questions? What's coming next? Is there going to be a knock on my door from the police or a welfare check and things of that sort? And so I just want to remind people, especially if you're not really close to this space, that a lot of us have gone through an experience by answering questions truthfully has led to an outcome that we don't want. And so that can remind us that questions aren't always safe. And so if you're coming at me and you really want to be a safe space for me, questions usually don't provide me with a sense of safety. And so I just kind of wanted to hit home on that. That's because good.
Makes a lot
at
of
the
sense.
end of the day, some people have answered some questions that led to an outcome that they did not want. And so questions don't always provide safety. So to your question, yes, silence. Silence, I think, is one of the most harmful things we can do to show care. I don't think that we show care in silence. Obviously, Sally, if I'm sitting right across from you and I could give you a hug or a pat on the back, that's not silent. That's a nonverbal communication. But
or just
me not
sitting there,
texting,
right? Just sitting there is powerful.
Presence is such a beautiful thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like that energy connection and that those mirror neurons that can happen. But if it's over the phone, if it's an email, if it's a text message and you're silent, I don't get to feel that presence. So we know that is harmful. I think the advice giving, the suggestions, I call it like the moralizing when you tell people what they should be doing. I think these are incredibly harmful things. I think they're also dismissive of our human experience, and nothing takes away my empowerment more than someone telling me they can solve my problem for me. At the end of the day, Sally, and this might be my own little ego that I need to work through sometimes, I need to know I could solve my problem. I need to know I can overcome my challenges. I need to know that Brandon can do this. And so when someone's telling me the ways that they would solve my problem, it like instantly makes me feel like I'm not empowered, or that like, how did I miss that? Like, you already have the solutions to my human experience, right? And it feels really dismissive. It also feels a little bit, I don't know, arrogant or narcissistic to think that we have the solutions to other people's problems. I also think you said it earlier, it's understandable how people want to know the why or the how. I think it's understandable that people want to suggest helpful things. Sure. Have you tried therapy? Have you done this? Have you done that? Right. And I think that comes from a place of like, people want to remove us from our burden. They don't want to see us in pain, but that's not what validation and connection is. Right. And so I think we need to stay away from messages that prompt, ask, or moralize someone into feeling like they should be doing something. You should go to therapy. You should get back into the book club. You should do this. Dang it, at the end of the day, I know I should be doing some of those things, and I don't need some of those reminders right now. And so I would ask people that when they're sharing a message of hope, if you want to engage a caring contact with a loved one, stay away from giving advice. Don't tell people what they should do. And then try to give a message that doesn't lend to an expectation that they have to fulfill. Because at times when we're in our struggle, trying to meet someone's expectation can just like kind of feel like another pressure that we have on us. And so I would advise people to stay away from that. And that might be hard to do, especially your relationship with people. Sure. I know my dear mama.
Yes, I was just saying my kiddos. I'm like,
I know my dear mama. I know her so much that she wants to take away that pain. And she's always like, well, Brandon, have you thought about? And I was like, I love you, but I wish you wouldn't say these things, right? But it's like when you have that relationship with person, especially if you've been a caregiver, if you've taken care of me my whole life, you want to suggest things that you think are going to make me feel better. I think it's natural, right? Let's resist that urge, because at the end of the day, prompting, asking, or kind of telling people what they should do doesn't necessarily increase our action or engagement in that behavior, right? And so it's our time to show connection, not show pressure towards something we think they should be doing.
Yes. I have a couple of like wobbly nuances inside of that. And one is where people are literally like out of ideas. Like, and when you can serve them up on a buffet, like this may or not work, like grapes on a vine, like think of it as a buffet, whatever. But I know a couple of things you can take them or leave them. Like just like have some humility that they haven't already thought of that or haven't already tried it, but sometimes they actually have it. So that's how I would just preface that. And I wouldn't do it until way later in the conversation. Show up with presence and understanding first. And the other thing that sometimes happen in the spirit of being helpful is overzealously championing hope and a bright future. Like, oh, you're just so loved, but everything, you got so much again, before you have taken the time to really understand the pain, that feels like you taking care of you want to believe that's true kind of thing.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that kind of overzealously championing hope and a perfect coming around the corner?
Again, I want to give like so much benefit of the doubt that when we show up that way, it's usually because we do care and we love that person and we want them to see the light. We want them to see that there could be a bright future. We want them to see this too shall pass. But I know for me, when I'm in a space that feels dark, when someone's just trying to shine or force the flashlight in there, it doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel genuine to my experience. It also might highlight, I don't know, another thought that's even more scary. Wow, they think the future is going to be good and I don't. And so I'm the one with the messed up thinking, right? I think there's this term that sometimes gets thrown around as like toxic optimism. And I think sometimes we can fall into that realm of like, hey, just be positive or everything's going to get better. And like the reality of that is like, we don't know that's true. Like we don't know everything's going to get better. I would love to believe this too shall pass and the brighter side is coming. But at the end of the day, we do know that people live in a certain human experience that is going to continue to be oppressed or marginalized or attacked. And so it getting better might not always be true. And if it is true, it might feel like years from now. And so it doesn't feel true in this moment. So I'm not having an authentic experience with you, right? And I also think it shows that maybe we're at two different levels. I hate to always quote other people, but I love this Brene Brown cartoon. You've probably seen it. The person falls into the hole. And they're like looking from above the hole and they're like, well, at least this and everything's going to get fine. And we just like draw this like silver lining around their dark cloud. And that shows me that like, you're not in it with me. Like you're trying to stay in the light rather than like jumping into the awkward dark with me and saying, I'm going to walk alongside you. Right. And so I would just say like, resist those urges to be incredibly optimistic or bright or hopeful. There might come time where those words are incredibly encouraging, when that person is pulling themselves out of the dark, when they're in a little bit more light, when they can feel like this too shall pass. I do need to just stay positive. But in those more intense moments, especially post-suicide attempt or post-suicide loss, I'm going to say this pretty curtly. Like when I lost my sibling or when I've lost some loved ones and someone told me just stay positive, I probably want to cut you out of my life because like, why do I have to stay positive? Now I've just experienced the most painful hurt I thought I could ever experience, right? And it just shows me that we're probably more protecting your comfort than mine. And so I would just say like, pay attention to where that human's at and like, let's use language that matches where they're at. Obviously, I don't want you to also be bleak and dark and be like, yeah, what's the point anyway? You're right, Brandon, right? Right. I think that there is this like place of toxic optimism that some of us are really repulsed by in moments of darkness, because the darkness is our truth. And if you're just forcing light, it feels like we're living in two different realities.
Yes, I keep playing that Brene Brown video over and over in my head. And the reason why it went viral, the reason why it was so popular was because we can see ourselves in I think it's a giraffe who's leaning over. And she's like, well, at least, if so-and-so's a good student, your other kid, and at least you have a husband, roll her eyes. And then she quickly deflects. You want a sandwich? Which tells us that it's all about her comfort. Like, let's get off this topic. It's making me uncomfortable looking at you down in that hole. And this is just, you want a sandwich? Yeah. And so that's the tell case too. Like you throw a little a little nibble of over toxic optimism, and then you're on your way. Like,
Yeah.
and again, we all do it. Like, I get why it's there, but let's, again, these little things that we're mindful. All right, like, let's shift gears and let's talk about what are the components of the caring contacts that really make them effective. And again, it's not complicated, but things to
No.
remind yourself of when you're engaging in this work. And also, we've been talking a lot about post, major event. But these also could do proactively. One of the things I love to do is I teach this in every workshop that I do, because again, universal skill. And I'm always doing it in a time when my loved ones are in crisis. And I love, like, okay, who's going to get my caring contact today? And I got to go through my list, like, oh, I haven't sent one to, such and such for a while. And then I got to intentionally think of, like, what is it that I am loving about this person right now? What am I grateful for about this person? And what an amazing practice to have a space for that, right? Yes, I know. It's so great. All right. So you tell me, what are some of the things when you think about the power of caring context? What makes them effective? What are some of the do's on our list?
Yeah. So something you said that I just want to piggyback and highlight is that caring contacts don't have to and shouldn't only be used during a post-crisis event, right? I think that we as a society and as a community could get much better at connecting with individuals during almost any time of distress or despair or transition that someone's going through. And that's something I'm deeply reminding myself of. So I have a loved one going through a transition. Maybe it's a job loss. Maybe it's a transition in and out of a relationship. I want to send a caring contact at those times too, because like this could be a message that prevents crisis or at least lets them know someone's there if they are distressed. So just first wanted to highlight that. We've kind of talked about some of this when we talked about what not to do, but again, I think like messages that don't form an expectation for the other person. I know some of the most heartfelt messages I received were just reminders that I was loved. Simply like, I love you is a very powerful message. Like those 3 words can like really touch your heart, especially when they come from someone who doesn't say it that often. Like I got a dear friend who I don't think says those 3 words that often, but when he says it to me, I'm like, that's powerful, right? I love the little reminders of times that we have shared together because they don't only connect me to you again, they connect me to that beautiful experience again. So I know after my suicide attempt, Sally, I got a message. It was a picture of a sunset that me and my best friend got to see together when we were on a backpacking trip. And he said, "Do you remember how vibrant that sunset was? I'm really grateful I got to share that moment with you." That's it. That message had
just
me.
Got chills all over my body.
Well, and there's so much imagery within a sunset too, especially if we're talking about suicide. Like there's so much imagery within that. And he talked about like, he just reminded me not only of that experience with him, but he reminded me of so many future experiences I want to have with it. I want to have more backpacking trips. I want to have more sunsets, right? And so this message that sometimes reminds me of another experience that made me feel alive and that made me feel loved. And I think sometimes those type of caring contacts can connect us to other things and to some like deep soul surviving things. And
so true. And actually, when you just described that whole sunset thing, it reminded me. So Craig Bryan in our world of suicide prevention is like king of the hill. Like he's just such a great researcher. He's done so much good things here. And he's got this 20-minute standalone crisis response intervention that has been shown to help prevent suicide attempts. And so I asked him, like, what's in this thing? Like, it's a magic box of 20 minutes. Like, what are you doing? And one of the things is what you just described. He says, well, we talk about the images, about the pictures of them from days in the past. And I was curious about that. And I said, doesn't that lead to yearning or what I have lost? He says, no. It does exactly what you described. He said, for almost everybody, it reminds them that is in them, that was and will be again. And I was like, dang, that is so incredible. Like that soul piece that you and Sarah Gear we're talking about, are like that. Yeah. That's the essence of who we are. And that is a ribbon woven through lots of our experiences with other people. And they remind us, this is who you are. This is how we were. This is how the world is and can be again. And it's wonderful. So thank you for that beautiful, I mean, literally still tingling with sparkles from that description.
And shout out to Sarah real quick, because I went to a presentation she put on many, many years ago that really changed the way that I thought about soul care and around things that my soul craves. and how that connects me to life-saving and life reaffirming things, right? And so I truly believe my soul craves connection with my best buddies. I believe my soul craves nature. It craves those beautiful sunsets. And so when I see things that made my soul and spirit feel filled, I know what was can be again. And that is like kind of my definition of recovery. Like what I had or what I've experienced that brings me true joy can also live again in the future. And so I think those messages are super powerful. I've also gotten some messages that I think are like, they're like the perfect embracing the awkward, if you will. I have a friend who just said, I simply don't know what to say, but I love you and I'm here for you, right? Or there's no words in these moments, but if you need a friend, just give me a call. If you don't mind, I'll call you tomorrow, right? And I think sometimes just calling it in, that you might not have the perfect words, but you do have the time and the presence and the energy and you care. Those are powerful messages too. Something you and I briefly talked about at the beginning is just don't overstress yourself with trying to find the perfect message, because at the end of the day, words alone are never going to solve someone's human experience. And so if we just try to do this whole algorithm in our head of like, what's the perfect thing to say, we're going to miss. Like, we're going to miss, right? The thing to say is something that shows that you care, something that shows that you don't have judgment towards it, right? And something that truly is deeply personal. Call me by my name. Call me by, my friends call me B. Call me by my abbreviated name. Call me B. Like, let me be seen and witnessed by that, right? Don't just copy and paste something. Don't go find a Hallmark card and copy and paste that, right? And dang it, don't use AI during this message. Like, I want it to feel like authentic. And I know what my friends sound like. I know the words they use. I know how they talk. I want it just to feel like it's authentic. And so for anyone listening to this podcast, and if you're thinking about engaging, which you should be, if you're thinking about engaging in caring contacts, that's what I want to hone in on. Be authentic to you. Use language you would use. Show care the way that you would show care, and make it personal. Remind them of a story that you experienced with them and the gratitude you have for them in that moment.
Yeah. Well, I play around in the construction place in space with a lot of
Yeah.
burly guys, but this is just so foreign. And I'm like, you got to trust me on this. Everybody pull out your phones. We're going to send a caring contact to someone on your A team. And they're like, do we have to? I'm like, yep, we're doing it right now. You practice once, you're much more likely to do it again in the future. And so they all do it. And then
I bet I could guess the response.
well, I said, you're going to, in about 30 seconds, because this is the kind of communication people cannot resist. In about 30 seconds, you're going to start getting your phones lit up here. And they're going to be one of three flavors. It's either going to be a, hey, I'm really stressed. That meant a lot to me. Or you're going to get a, dude, I miss you. Let's go do something this weekend. Or you're going to get a,
are you okay?
Are you okay? And that are you okay is because this is not a character for you. It feels weird. And that's what I always say, but that's okay because all new behaviors start somewhere. Keep going.
I love that.
Keep going because you're actually going to learn to really appreciate these when you get your friends, your A team to do this with each other. And like, you can have fun with it. It's okay to send whatever, cat videos, funny things, whatever, as part of this little love note that you send back and forth, as long as you stay authentic and real about it. And humor, I think, can be a very helpful thing.
Yes.
And then I also usually point out, not to my construction guys, but to some of like the clinicians that I also try to train on this, like, if you don't know where to start, Ursula Whiteside did a Reddit vote up caring contact thing. And those are like powerfully poetic. I can't use them, but I always get inspired to like, oh, okay, maybe I could put this sentiment in my own words, as a place to kind of, I don't know what to say moment, or I've already said the things that I usually say. And maybe I just repeat myself again, but sometimes I go to her webpage just to get a little inspiration of how to put it in a new way.
Yes. Shout out Ursula Whiteside and everything she's done.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit more about the non-demand, because I think it's also subtle. We talked about like not a lot of questions about the curiosity, but I think sometimes people's first go-to is the, hey, how are you? Or, did you do the thing, or are we going to do the thing? And, again, not horrible, but it's a question that now has to come up with an answer. So the non-demand thing is another just screen you can think about as you're putting words together. Like, am I demanding something from this? Or is this just like a genuine gratitude showing up, I'm here kind of response? Yeah.
Yeah. I think we stay in a place where we don't expect something back from that person. And even if it feels like we are not expecting back, they might have that feeling of expectation, right? And the last thing that I want to feel when I'm already having a heightened state of suicidal intensity is that I'm failing someone's expectation, right? Or
Right.
that I have to do something right now when I don't actually want to do anything. And so I think we stay away from those demanding things. Again, this can feel natural. Do you want to hang out later? How are you doing? Do you got time for me? These could feel like natural, friendly questions. But in heightened states, those could feel like really pressured, demanding questions that can also, in my personal experience, can lead me to feeling like a sense of a failure. I know, Sally, if I leave some of my friends on red, I start to feel like I'm a bad friend. I haven't responded back to you yet, right? Some of my friends are like, I want to go hang out, and I don't necessarily do. And it's not because I'm isolating, it's because I'm maybe in a different place or I'm healing in a different way. I could start to tell myself this story of I'm a bad friend because I don't want to hang out with them. And the last thing that we want to do is send a message that we think is caring, but is leaving them to feel like they're falling short, right? And so staying away from things that are non-demanding and that don't create an expectation for the receiver of that message. And that can feel pretty foreign to people, right? And so maybe before you type out that text message, before you hit send, ask yourself, like, is this asking something back from that person? Is this demanding something from that person? If they totally didn't respond at all, are they still going to hear that I care about them and that I witness them? And at the end of the day, that's what we're shooting for. If they don't respond back even at all, do they still feel cared for and witnessed right now?
That's right.
And that's what I'm getting at.
And that is a corollary for the person sending. If you don't hear back, do not assume it did not make an impact. If you don't hear back, you have no idea how it landed, but do not assume it did not make an impact. There's often a lot of other things going on. And it is often those authentic messages of care that resonate and carry with, even when people don't respond.
Yeah, you don't know the seed that you're planting or the bridge that you're building. Or it could be 3 days later that I respond back. But because of that message you sent on Tuesday and I'm responding back to you on Friday, I feel safe on Friday. So you don't know it, and so I think sometimes we need to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt and kind of release it out into the universe of like, I don't want to contextualize that as a bad message if they didn't respond back. Like, I just want to say like the message was likely received and that seed was planted, and we'll see what time brings of it.
That's right. Seed planting. And also, I think sometimes it's a tipping point thing. It's like I sent something and then another friend sends something and then they get another message from the universe about something about their worthiness. And then all of a sudden, okay, maybe I can let this in just a little bit. Sometimes it's accumulation of experiences that happen as well. Brandon, I have loved this conversation so much. I already have infographics in my head and like a blog and like all kinds of other things I want to do with you. So we will do these things. And I'm very excited to actually
where you can always find me. I'm so passionate about talking about this, and so I do appreciate that we've had the opportunity to have the conversation.
Me as well. And for all the listeners, we've covered a lot of ground here with like outside references and resources and all that. We're going to put all that in show notes. So if you want to dive into some of that a little bit more, you can have at it because we will stockpile the landing page with all kinds of links and other things. Brandon, I'm just going to go back and recap just a smidge and then come back to you for your final thoughts. So if you're just tuning in or coming back in after a break, I'm here with Brandon Wilcox from Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners, and we're talking about caring connections, caring contacts. We've talked about mutual aid, where it's reciprocal. We're both benefiting. We're just walking along together, companioning kinds of ideas, especially when people are experiencing suicidal intensity. I loved how you also said stories become the medicine. So just a little bit of coming alongside, sharing those meaningful experiences can really reduce the shame and the guilt and can help people lean into their courage. But however, silence, on the other hand, can reinforce shame and judgment and speculation about what other people are going through. So one of your main messages is embrace the awkward. And if you want to hear some more from Sherry Skelding, his partner, Rocky Mountain Crisis Partner, hop over to Headspace in the Workplace. We talk about what does this look like at work? And her message was just like, all right, just do it. Just do it. Don't overthink it. Just do it. Embrace the awkward. So that's what we're going to encourage you to do. So there is a long list of no's and maybe think it through things, but I want to hammer home the do's. Just show up. Show up with authentic care for this person, love and gratitude, and you will not go wrong. You will not go wrong. And it might feel weird. Just do it. Whether that's text, voicemail, little note, whatever, it will make a big difference. We guarantee. So Brandon, what's one final thing that you want to make sure that people do not miss?
I when I reflect on everything that we have talked about today, and um, I think the most important thing that I just want to highlight is that whether you personally feel it or not, it's very real that we are living in a loneliness epidemic, and that people feel alone and they feel isolated. And oftentimes they feel like they have to have their struggles alone. And it's really important to remind ourselves that something really simple can be incredibly powerful. And that's just a message of care. I think that our soul and our human experience craves being witnessed for who we are and the experience that we're going through. And that is powerful medicine. So let's not overcomplicate it. Let's remind ourselves that people feel alone. Even if we don't feel alone, there's many people out there in the world that feel incredibly alone. And a simple message reminds them that they're not.
I'm just going to let that sit and pause for a second, because that was well put. Brandon, if people want to connect with you, learn more about some of the things you're sharing, learn more about the services of Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners, mutual aid, any of those ideas, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, you could go to our company's website. That's RM as in Rocky Mountain, rmcrisispartners.org. From there, there's a link on our staff's page, and you could click on me to email me. You can find me on LinkedIn. And those are probably the two best ways to reach out to me. If you ever see me out and about or at any of the conferences we might share together, just stop me and say hi. I want to extend myself to anyone in this space. If you're curious, if you want to work alongside each other, if you just want to share a story because it was powerful for what we heard today, I'm here for you in this space.
Woo-hoo! Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, my friend. And again, this is
friend.
Another step in our journey together. And I hope we get to do a lot more things together. Thank you to our incredible team behind the scenes here. We've got Dave, our sound editor, and Chase and Stacy and Elias helping us make this come into your ears or your eyeballs if you're watching it on YouTube. And also, thank you, listeners, for prioritizing this in your day. You got a lot of options to choose from out there, and you chose this. That speaks a lot about who you are in this world. And so if you like this, please share it, because this is one of those things that if we can spread it, oh my goodness, what an amazing ripple effect this will have. So in closing, open your heart, challenge your thinking, and take action to save lives. Together, we can restore dignity and sustain a passion for living.